da brasileira Juliana Marins.
Juliana Marins.
But an Indonesian rescue team said it found Marin's body beside a crater after days of intensive searches, complicated by extremely harsh terrain and weather.
On June 21st, 2025, Juliana Marins was making her way up the Rinjani summit like hundreds of other hikers like her. And then the unthinkable happened. All alone, she fell nearly 600 meters down the crater of the volcano. For 4 days, Juliana sat at the bottom of the crater. And for much of that time, Juliana was alive. But help didn't reach her in time. And when help finally did arrive on the 4th day, she was already gone. How could help have reached her faster? This is the question that we look at in this video. Since Juliana's fall, already one Malaysian hiker has had an accident. Fortunately, he was rescued. But another Malaysian hiker in May was not so lucky. 1 month before Juliana fell, Rani Abdul Ghani also fell.
Mr. Ghani was an experienced mountaineer, having climbed every peak in Malaysia. Not only beginners can run into problems on Rinjani.
In this video, we want to do a closer look at the timeline between Juliana's fall and when her body was finally recovered 4 days later. This isn't to dig up old wounds, but rather to look toward the future, to understand who the main players were in the rescue effort, to understand what went wrong, to understand what went right, who stepped up heroically to help toward the end, and finally, what changes need to happen. Before traveling full-time, I helped organizations look at systemic problems. And one thing I've learned from that is that most of the time, individual people want to do what's right, but if the systems around them aren't adequate, then those individuals are kind of set up to fail. With that said, let's start with the 3 key players that were involved in the rescue effort of Juliana. Basarnas is Indonesia's formal search and rescue agency with units across the country, the closest one being in Mataram.
Mataram is Lombok's capital, and this will become more important later on in how the rescue effort unfolds.
Basarnas has taken a lot of criticism in Juliana's case for not having been able to reach Juliana faster.
Early on, Basarnas was not self-sufficient and had to rely on outsiders for critical support, such as the next group we'll talk about.
A lot of the initial information on Juliana's location actually came from hikers that happened to be using their drone in the vicinity.
Like this.
Yeah.
It's gonna go to the way.
Yeah, so we need to.
The third key player is the volunteer rescue group. They didn't come into the scene until the 3rd day of the rescue effort. As it became clear over the first couple of days that the official SAR team was not having success.
As we now go into exactly what went wrong in the coming days, we'll better understand why the volunteer rescue group entered the picture. On Friday, June 20th, Juliana and her group arrive at the Sembalun Crater Rim campsite after hiking all day. The Sembalun Crater Rim campsite is the closest settlement near the most dangerous part of Mount Rinjani, the summit. During the high season, it's almost a permanent station, with hikers arriving every day. But as we'll see, although this central campsite does have an official park post, it is not equipped with everything needed to do a proper emergency response. So where was the equipment? We'll return to that, but first, let's get back to Juliana's fall and the aftermath.
So on the day of her fall, Juliana has been hiking throughout the night.
The summit hike starts at 2 a.m. on Saturday, June 21st.
And everybody's goal is to be able to get to the summit before the sunrise hits because people want that picturesque moment.
But sometime in the early morning, Juliana gets exhausted.
And so she agrees with the guide that she's going to stay behind by herself and rest while the rest of the group continues onward. But tragically, she's never able to meet up with the group again.
Because tragically, sometime before 6:30 a.m., she had her fall.
The tour guide returns at around 6:30 a.m., hears her screaming, sees her flashlight, and realizes what has happened.
Mount Rinjani, especially the summit, is an infamously difficult environment. Typical conditions on the volcano include fog, wind, dust, and unstable terrain, all of which make rescues difficult. Anyone who signs up for search and rescue duty is brave, whether on the formal SAR team or the volunteer rescue group. Rinjani's environment is harsh, and that's not going to change.
So yeah, what I'm showing you, basically this was caused by the earthquake in 2018.
But that doesn't mean rescue teams can't get better in facing those harsh conditions.
And now we have to walk through it because it's collapsing the main path. So now it becomes part of the ascent.
Just like this earthquake made a new path, there are lessons to be learned from this recent tragedy. We'll first talk about the problems that arose each day, but then we'll give our thoughts on how they could be fixed in the future.
The initial response of the official SAR team was very slow.
It's not that the team was dragging their feet or did not want to help, but the key problem that arose on the first day was one of logistics. Not just getting to Juliana, but getting the equipment to the park itself.
Most of the rescue equipment wasn't even being kept at the park and had to be brought in from 2.5 hours away in the capital of Lombok. Once the equipment arrives at the Sembelune trailhead, it's not over. Then they still have to hike pretty much the entire day. And so this is the same trail that Juliana took the day before with her group. It's going to take a full day just to arrive at the location where Juliana fell. All of this time is during the critical window of when it would have been easiest to save Juliana. So pretty much the entire day is eaten up in hiking and getting the equipment.
Our first solution is for the SAR team to have a permanent rescue center at the Sembelune Crater Rim campsite with all necessary equipment and a few dedicated team members.
If the park could just have a rescue operations center right there at the most dangerous part of Rinjani, that would enable people to act immediately when somebody is in danger. On June 22nd, the SAR team had retrieved the longer rope, had all of the equipment that they needed to begin a descent down the crater. But then the usual conditions of Mount Rinjani arose. As is usual for Rinjani, the fog came in, complicating matters.
Almost there. It's nice to see a glimpse of the lake. Well, and it's gone.
But perhaps most important was the fact that the team then struggled to put in secure anchors that would allow them to successfully complete a descent down the volcano crater. Ultimately, the team pulled back just before sunset. Monday, June 23rd is the third official day of the rescue effort. And similar to the day before, the SAR team continues to struggle to make real progress in reaching Juliana. Ultimately, the combination of the same factors prevent them from getting down to Juliana on the third day.
Solution number 2, provide more training to the SAR team for operating at Rinjani and conduct regular drills throughout the year. Rinjani is always going to be a harsh environment, but it's predictable in its harshness. More training and drills would help the SAR team operate better in conditions that, while harsh, are typical of Rinjani. I would be hesitant to make this claim if the volunteer rescue group hadn't entered the scene to show us it was possible.
We're heading into the fourth day of the rescue effort, and the chances of being able to recover Juliana alive are getting slimmer and slimmer. It's in this context that another group has started to assemble, and that is a volunteer rescue group led by someone named Agam Rinjani. Now, Agam Rinjani has hiked Mount Rinjani over 500 times, has summited over 300 times, so he definitely knows this particular terrain. He arrives with a group of 7, himself included, and he goes about setting up own rigging system, his own anchors, and they have no intention of backing down even though night is coming. They move forward with that plan. Unfortunately, sometime between the time that Agam and his team were making their descent, the sands of the crater shifted again, and this time caused Juliana to have a dramatic fall.
If she wasn't dead already, this is the fall that would end her life.
When Agam and his team finally made contact with Juliana's body, she was no longer alive, but they stayed on the mountain overnight to protect the body.
Agam and his friends actually spent 2 nights in the crater until the body could be safely retrieved on Wednesday, June 25th. Our focus so far has been on how the rescue team could better respond to emergencies in the future. But another important question is how to prevent emergencies to begin with. Probably the biggest change on the preventative side is to increase education for all parties involved.
All the people who ventured up here.
For tourists, help them have realistic expectations of what the trek will entail before arriving at Mount Rinjani.
The first day we just need to go all the way to the crater rim, and then the next day we're gonna hike sunset.